Welcome, brave souls, to Fear File Chronicles, your one-way ticket to spine-chilling stories and terrifying tales. Tonight, we'll be diving into the darkest corners of the human mind with the story, I Was Born and Raised in a Cult. When I escaped, I learned that their beliefs were real. Part 3, penned by the twisted mind of Adamantius. Together, we'll explore the unexplained and face our deepest fears. But before we begin, if you enjoy trembling in terror, be sure to hit that like button, share this video with your fellow fear fanatics, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the bell notification so you never miss an eerie episode. Your support truly means the world to us, so feel free to leave a comment below to join the Fear File Chronicles community. Now, without further ado, let's unravel the mysteries of the unknown together. As we delve into tonight's fear-inducing story, I was born and raised in a cult. When I escaped, I learned that their beliefs were real. Part 3. Dim the lights and prepare yourself for a chilling journey into the Fear File Chronicles. The sunlight gleamed through the crack of the cave, illuminating slowly moving waves of dust in the air like poppy seeds, blown off their skeletal stems. My throat ached for water, and as I began to move, my body pleaded for more rest. Each blink of the eye wanted to stay shut. It took me a painful minute to come to my senses. The sleep deprivation made relevant thoughts hard to come by, and fresh, blood-soaked memories were a stew of on and off delirium. A terrible nightmare. A lived-in terror. The burden of being alive was thrust upon me with force, but I did not feel awake, much less alive. I moved my arm across the peaking sunlight, and its warmth was an antidote for the wish of death that had begun to ferment in the back of my mind. A single conviction lifted me to stand on my shaking legs. Keep moving. I listened to the forest until I was satisfied that the others were gone. Once outside, I had to readjust my eyes to the light, bringing tears to my scorching eyes. Birds chirped with glee, and bushes rustled with the sounds of small critters rummaging about their daily tasks. Once I was out of the ravine, the forest looked completely different in the sunlight, making it increasingly difficult to determine which way was forward. Colors and defined shapes splattered across the way. Leaves fluttered and danced in the wind, as damp moss squished under my feet. Ferns like bodyguards littered the forest floor. It felt as if a curse had been lifted and the forest had been relinquished back to its old self. I used the ravine as my focal point to figure out which way I had come from, and then headed into the opposite direction. I walked with my eyes crossed and blurry from exhaustion, keeping my ears perked for anything that differed from the chatter of the woods. Soon, I began to hear voices in the distance. I approached carefully and came to the edge of a small clearing. I hid behind a large boulder, carefully peeking over and around it to see what was happening. In the clearing, standing in a scattered circle, was my father alongside some other men from the group. Between them, I could see men holding shovels rising from the ground between them. They were digging a hole. Behind them, I could see men coming through the woods with wheelbarrows, dumping something next to the pit, then returning to the forest. The wind picked up and faced me, confirming my suspicions. Death was in the air. I wondered if they'd found Mother already. The men spoke angrily between spiteful shoveling, arguing amongst each other. My father looked like he was ready to explode, smash something or someone to pieces. Venomous, dry spit filled my mouth as I watched him scream and argue with the other men. I wished death upon all of them. I wanted to run up there with a knife and slice through their throats and their most precious veins until the earth was thick with their blood. But I'd go to my father first, even if the rest could fend me off, kill me before I could get them. I wanted to make sure that he would die. It was his fate, I concluded. For the first time, I really saw him for what he was, a dead man walking. I wondered if the anger I felt was a curse I'd inherited from him, but I had to contain myself, and I swallowed the vile spit and continued past them while keeping my eyes set on their movements. I moved slowly, being careful around wavering bushes and sticks that could crack and give away my position. The sun beat down through the trees at the edge of the clearing, burning my skin. Almost out of reach, I stepped on a mossy rock and slipped, tumbling over long grass. Shit. The men quieted for a moment, and I knew that they heard me. "Over there," one of them shouted. I lifted myself up and started running as fast as I could. Toxic puffs of breath inebriated my mind and squeezed my lungs as my legs worked overtime to escape. I didn't look back, but I could hear rustling behind me. Getting closer, I jumped over rocks and thick roots, hoping that they'd get caught up in the terrain. Shouting now, my worst fear incarnated as a large, rugged hand that grabbed the nape of my neck, pulling my torso down to the ground as my legs flailed towards the sky. They had me. Tears laced with fear started pouring out of the corners of my eyes as the man stood over me, scanning my face. The man bent down and placed his knee on my chest, squeezing all the air out of my lungs in one swift move. My ribs were on the verge of crumbling under his weight. He turned his head around and gestured towards someone.
"It's her."
Behind him, someone replied,
"Bring her to the pit."
Another man came to his aid, and they dragged me by my arms to the clearing. I wasn't about to help them, so I kept my body limp, my feet dragging the ground as they puffed and huffed their way to the pit. They threw me down next to the hole, and I could feel the cool earth below beckoning me. Then, that dreadful, vile voice scraped my ears.
"Allison, you fucking scum!"
My father yelled, walking up to face me.
"You ruined it all. Don't you get it? You're a disgrace to yourself, to us."
I didn't answer. I imagined a knife manifesting into the palm of my hand, but it wouldn't come.
"Don't you have anything to say for yourself?"
I kept silent, which just seemed to amp him up. I could feel his fuse burning short.
"You son of a whore. Just like your mother, a degenerate cunt with no mind to speak of. You think your little play was smart. You're fucking dead. I'll make sure of it."
On the other side of the pit, a sweaty man dumped another body on the mountain. Their limbs were like snakes in heat, twisting and turning over and under each other as heads popped out in between. Oozing out brains flocked by hundreds of flies, the sun fermenting their insides.
"That's the last one,"
the man said carefully, noticing the tense scene before him. I stared into his eyes, begging for mercy.
"Well, darling, you're gonna get what's coming. You could have joined them, but now it's all gone to shit,"
Father said, moving behind me now, his shadow lingering over me. My head whiplashed as his boot made contact with my back with terrifying force, sending me flying into the death pit. In the cool shadow of my grave, I tasted the iron of the earth and tried to move, but my back was sore and frigid. When I finally turned around, I saw the dark features of my father's head blocking the sun in an evil eclipse. He spat on my face with anger, blinding my left eye.
"Let's begin,"
he said to the other men, giving me one last look before walking away. The men got to work and began to drop the bodies of the women into the pit. Their stiff cadavers rolled over the edges, kicking up dirt and dust, making it difficult for me to breathe. Dodging them was difficult, and soon my legs were trapped between two bodies, and I could no longer move. The bodies kept coming, rolling down like logs on a hill, until I was neck deep in them, gasping for air. Their smell was putrid and their limbs cold, giving me violent shivers as the earth engulfed us. The women hugged me in their death-cold embrace as their minds were oozing out bit by bit, sticking to my skin like glue. Flies swarmed feverishly around me, delighted by the feast. The air quickly became toxic, the fumes coating my lungs with scorching rot. Through the menagerie of body parts, oozing liquids, and dry coatings beginning to form on their open skulls, the only thing I felt was fury. Pure, unafraid fury that coursed through my veins, wanting only one thing: to kill my father and everyone else who'd been part of this unholy massacre. And I couldn't do it. They had won. As the sun was blotted out by yet another dead vessel, I heard a commanding shout from a distance. The men stopped working, and for a split second, the forest was silent. Then it began raining fire. The air erupted in a sea of bullets, weapons violently clicking as they dispersed their deadly ammunition. I could hear quick thumps slicing through flesh in hot streaks that were followed by bodies falling on the ground. I couldn't see who was shooting and who was being shot at, but in a span of 30 seconds, the firefight ended. My ears rang with their seething echo, but my senses told me to keep shut. Not until I knew what had happened. Steps, confident and assertive, came closer until they surrounded the pit and fired off singular rounds, making sure that their targets were eliminated. There was something surgical about it. Just a quick procedure done according to protocol. Muffled voices started coming through, and with nothing left to lose, I cried for help. After some discussion amongst the gunmen, bodies began being lifted out of the pit and rays of sunlight stabbed my eyes. Once they'd removed enough bodies to see me, I was faced with a small army of men pointing big, black assault rifles at my head. Someone said,
"One of them's alive."
A man without a gun emerged from between them. He nodded at me and said,
"That's her."
The men worked efficiently to clear up the human debris, and with a gentle touch, they lifted me out of the pit. Finally free of the mess of bodies, I could smell that I had inherited their odor. It stuck to me, and I thought that I would forever be stained by the sickly sweet scent of death. The man without a gun walked up to me and looked me up and down silently. The others stayed quiet, posing with their guns gripped, ready to aim them in seconds if need be.
"Allison,"
he said. I looked up at his face, holding my hand as a visor to shield me from the sun.
"Isn't that your name?"
I hadn't spoken in so long that when I tried to, all that came out was a dry cough. On my second try, I mustered out a croaked, dehydrated yes. The man turned and signaled at the armed men. They brought down their guns, and one of them brought me a water bottle. I drank it in one go, wheezing for air through my nose between gulps as the plastic bottle crumpled from suction.
"We heard what happened here, Allison. You're safe with us. We're going to take you away."
A flower bloomed in my mind. The plan had worked. I was finally saved. The relief washed over me so harshly I almost fell to the ground as my body let out all its aches into the arms of this gentle savior. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," I sobbed as tears of joy welled up in my eyes.
"Come with me. We'll take care of you,"
the man said, holding out his hand. As he escorted me to the edge of the clearing, I glanced over my shoulder at the scene. All of the men were shot dead, including my father. It was like an angel had descended to do the deed for which I was too drained to do. It was finally over. I was out, and my father was dead, like he should be. As we walked through the woods, I suddenly remembered Jacob and the rest. What about the others?
"The others?"
The man asked. The other kids. There's more of them, like me.
"We'll take care of them. Don't worry. And, I'm sorry about your mother. She died for no reason. A terrible thing."
Thank you, I whispered, squeezing his hand tight as he continued leading me through the woods. The forest came to an abrupt end. We were at another clearing, and there was a line of obsidian-colored cars lined up neatly. Beyond them, a dirt road curved around a placid field. I was escorted to one of the cars, and the man buckled me into the back seat before he jumped to the driver's seat. We waited for a while until one of the armed men emerged from the forest and joined us. Clambering his way into the front passenger seat, the car began to back out, and in a flash, we were flying through the road, the car bumping over potholes in a soothing rhythm, rough dirt crackling under its heavy tires. I was enamored by the sights. I'd never seen fields like this before. Everything was fresh, and even though it was just boring countryside, to me, it was heaven. Once we met an intersection and moved on to a paved road that took away all those soothing irregularities of the dirt, the two men began to talk to each other.
What do we do with her?
Asked the armed man, his gun now tucked tightly between his legs, the muzzle resting against the floor.
It's the men's fault. They didn't take enough precautions.
But she's the outlier.
That's not her fault.
I know, but
But what? She isn't responsible. That angry drunk, her father is. He should have kept a closer eye on her. He's the reason for all this.
I didn't quite understand what they were discussing, but I trusted them. They helped me, saved me from sudden death, and the unarmed man seemed to share my hate for my father, and that was enough kinship for me.
either way.
The armed man continued, more careful with his choice of words now.
We found the men destroying the evidence, the women dead, and 100 kids working for nothing. It's a hell of a lot to clean up, is all I'm saying. And what purpose does she have anymore?
She. Purpose. I started getting queasy in my seat, but I refrained from interrupting their conversation, instead looking out the window with a slack-jawed face, like I was too fixated on the outside world to hear them talking.
She could still serve a purpose.
How? She doesn't even know.
And then the armed man glanced at me and continued in a whisper.
She doesn't even know what it is.
She escaped and evaded capture for a full day. Almost got out. She's smart. And with the state of what happened there, we need more thinkers among us. Besides, she's well acquainted now.
The car swerved into a side road that meandered through another forest. I started getting nauseous from the movements of the vehicle as we went up hills and around bends, until finally we came to a straight patch of road, which led to a large clearing. The men got out of the car and the unarmed man came to open the door for me, gently lifting me out of the back seat.
It's just a little walk away. Can you do that?
He asked me with soft eyes. I nodded, and we descended down a dirt road that led us through the forest. I started getting scared again, but after all that had happened, I would rather be anywhere than back near that compound. Besides, I had no clear idea of how the outside world worked, so I put my faith in the unarmed man, trusting him to bring me somewhere safe. The forest started clearing up, and we ascended a faint hill. Once we reached the top, before us laid a large valley surrounded by the forest. Down there were buildings, small farms, and people that looked like ants from this far high. The whole concoction was surrounded by a high metal fence. It looked exactly like the compound I had just escaped. Well, my friends, we've reached the end of tonight's chilling tale. I was born and raised in a cult. When I escaped, I learned that their beliefs were real. Part 3, by the talented Adamantius. I hope you've enjoyed our descent into darkness, and that you'll carry a piece of the Fear File Chronicles with you as you drift into uneasy dreams. If our story left you shivering and shaking, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who crave a good scare, and subscribe to the Fear File Chronicles for more haunting horrors. Remember to hit the bell notification so you're always among the first to know when a new nightmare awaits. As always, we appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sharing your fears and frights with us truly means a lot, so don't be shy to engage with our sinister community. Until next time, remember to embrace the darkness, for it is within the shadows that our most terrifying stories are born. Good night, and stay scared.